Welcome, everybody, to Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker, back at you with another interactive class out of the secret library of the Connected Universe. Well, we have a fantastic one up tonight. We're going to be exploring lost civilizations of ancient Turkey. So we're going to Gobekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, underground civilizations like Derinkuyu, and other mysteries as well. So this is one that I'm really looking forward to diving into with all of you this evening. Do want to let those know that are listening to the podcast version of this later. Please join us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, connecteduniverseportal.com. Join us for the live stream show. Also there in the Connected Universe portal, you get that, not just the weekly interactive class and the after show, but you get sneak peek and behind the scenes videos, monthly Q&A video, which just came out, the Mike's Morning Mug videos, which we had that deep dive into the Stargate light beams and all that here lately. A lot of different things going on. Of course, all those insider videos from ancient Egypt. You've had Ireland in there. You've had the American Southwest. Yes, you are now going to have Turkey as well. And I don't just mean for Thanksgiving. I mean the country Turkey, which we are going to be exploring this September. So yeah, this is kind of a preview of the Ancient Mysteries of Turkey tour, September 8th through 17, 2026, with myself and Mohammed Ibrahim. This will be through really his tour company, Saba Tours, which you're familiar with, of course, from the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour that we do. So he's been doing some of these turkeys and tour here lately, like Cliff Dunning. He's done some tours there with Cliff from the Earth Ancients podcast. And so Mohammed and I are going to be exploring Turkey together as well. So we're going to dive into a lot of the different things that we're going to be exploring while we are there. Now, you may have noticed coming into this, those that are on the YouTube live stream right now, that there's a second live option for an after show. So usually what I do is on the Connected Universe portal, I just run straight through. So I'll disconnect from YouTube and just keep running on the portal for the live stream show, for the after show, I mean. But I enabled the memberships here on YouTube. So you have the option now. This is the one I'm going to do is when I end this public live stream, I'm going to kick into that after show, which will also run there on YouTube if you have the membership. So those that are part of the Connected Universe portal, you can watch it there. Those that get the YouTube membership, you can watch it here. So those on the portal, there's a second link there for you as well, because it's the way I had to do it. So yeah, you'll get kicked and then you have to come back in. Sorry. It's just the way we have to do it. And then those that are on Patreon and the portal, you get that full upload there with the whole thing later on. So that's the way we're going to try things, see if this works out well for those that want to grab the YouTube membership, because the after show, when we go like Patreon and then on the membership here, is that lower tier that doesn't cost as much as some of the others that have the bigger perks. So it's an option if you want to try it there. So all right, let me stop yammering my mouth about those sorts of things. Want to say hello to, well, first one that jumped in was Tina Thorne. Thank you for joining us tonight, Tina. Cosmic Hypnotist, that is my fiance Kate. And yeah, we're going to be leaving very soon here next week to head out to Sedona for our wedding ceremony, which would be absolutely incredible. Really looking forward to that. And Tats 4316, hello from Ireland. Yes, hello. Great to see you down there this evening. All right. So Turkey, let's get into this. Yeah, and again, I'm really, really excited that we're going to be doing this tour. And I think, really what people think most of when it comes to Turkey these days is, of course, Gobekli Tepe, which, this was founded in 1994. It dates at least, it's not a definitive age, but it is at least from 8,000 to 9,500 BC. So we're talking 11,000 years ago, but that's at least how old it is. It is most likely even older, and they've only excavated a very, very small portion of it. They've kind of halted excavations for the moment as they do things like set up the visitor center. So here you can see the enclosure with those fantastic T-shaped pillars, and this here is an artist rendering of, well, actually it's a photo of it without the top, and then they've got the star field beyond there, because this is the way the ancients would have looked at it. They would have seen this entire complex with the stars. So in some ways, it's kind of a shame that they put the top over the or this roof over the top of the complex, but to try to keep it a little bit shady there for tourists and visitors and make it a more pleasant experience. Than this is kind of like the original. I won't say the original did. This was the dig from early 20 teens. So basically, yeah, it was 1994 when Klaus Schmidt started excavating this. It was really initially discovered back in the 1960s that, oh, there's stuff popping up out of the hill here. Gobekli Tepe means pot-bellied hill. So when you hear Tepe, that's the hill. So when we talk about Karahan Tepe, that's because it's a hill. And these sites were buried purposefully. That's what we're basically discovering here, is that there, for some reason in distant antiquity, they decided to bury these particular sites. Like, they were protecting them from something. And what was that something? Well, at the time that it stopped being used was that end of the Younger Dryas era, in which we believe that there was some sort of cataclysm that occurred. More and more researchers are coming forward and saying, yeah, something happened. Now, we do know, more traditional academia says, well, there was a significant warming trend. Well, yeah, with that significant warming trend, there are floods and other things that happen. And, there are a couple of different camps here. Some people believe it was a comet impact. Some people believe it was a massive solar flare. Personally, I don't know if that really matters. The problem that I have there is traditional academia will look at, they're basically calling it alternative history now. They'll look at the alternative history community and kind of laugh at us because you guys can't even agree on what your theories are. So, so I don't think we really need to agree whether it was comet impact or solar flare, just something happened. I think we do agree on that one, as something happened. So how do they know? Were they made privy to whatever in the world it was that happened that caused a worldwide devastation? Now, when we look at ancient Egypt, which of course I'm more familiar with, we find records of the Gold Circle. I talked about the Gold Circle a little bit today in the blog that I posted. If you missed that, still working on finishing up the Egypt travel blog from this past November. So we've been very, very busy. And again, we're about to head out to Sedona and go get married. So yeah, you can imagine how busy we have been. So I'm still working on that. But today was Edfu. So I got into all of my Atlantis work, which I absolutely love. And at the very end, I was talking about the Gold Circle, which was, according to some variations of the Book of the Dead, a lot of different variations, different lengths, different stories that were involved. And in some of those, they talk about this Gold Circle, which was basically a circular domed building in which priests were there trying to predict the next great cataclysm. And as they were writing all these things down, they were using gold for their hieroglyphs and their lettering and all of this. Now, how much of that were they using gold? I don't think they were using gold per se to go ahead and write out all those predictions. That would be a little extraneous, especially if you're talking about really, really significant calculations here. Like, if I'm going to do some, longhand addition or long division or something like that, that would be a lot of gold to do some of that. I mean, I don't know how many remember from high school when you had to write out all your proofs, show your work. That would be a lot of gold. But in any case, the ancients knew something was happening, and this very well could have been some sort of preservation technique to make sure that the entire site wasn't destroyed. Maybe they thought that they would come back here over time to unearth it, but there was such a massive devastation that your first couple generations there, they're not going to be worrying about digging up Gobekli Tepe or Karahan Tepe or some of these others out of the hill again. It's like, no, we need to survive. We need to find some housing. We need to get some food. We need to try to plant some, crops or get some, uh, you know, go back to hunter gatherer mode. And that's another thing about this is, the mainstream academia, for the most part, most of them, not all, are trying to say that this was, a group of hunter gatherers that somehow decided that they were going to collectively build all these things together. Like, hey, we're hunting, over on that side of the mountain. You guys are down the valley over there. You guys are on the other side of the mountain. Yeah, let's all come together and build this huge, massive temple complex that will meet on occasion. It sounds really weird because hunter gatherers, by nature, by definition, were not stagnant. They were going wherever the food was. So as the animals migrated, they followed them. It's almost as silly as when I talk about the spiral pattern, and you have some mainstream academics, traditional academics, that say one of the theories is the spiral was indicative of a migration pattern, and it's like, who migrates in a spiral? So it's silly things like that that just don't make any sense. But what they're trying to do is cram it into their narrative. So even just recently here, last year, you had this this little statue that was found in one of the walls. And what academics have said is that this was a deliberate placement of the statue to serve as a sacred guardian or a ritual offering or potentially watching over ceremonies. Maybe, but I mean, look at where it's at, just the way it's kind of shoved in there. And in fact, it looks like the face is inward, not outward. So if it's inward, how could it be watching the ceremonies? Right. So you can see kind of the arm in the middle is, you can see the hand is toward the front where the face is. And when you see it there in the wall, the hand is facing inside the wall. So how does it watch over ceremonies and things like that? I think a more probable answer is that it was used as filler. And we've seen this before at other locations where we're going to see it at the very end of this when we talk about the basilica cisterns, where pieces were reused and they were repurposed. We're not using that piece anymore, and we need something in here to fill the wall, or maybe it was a repair. So indicating that again, it's much older than it was, and this is how we have found a lot of things. Again, like around Egypt, which is I'm of course more familiar with. We talked the other week about Hatshepsut's red shrine Stargate. Well, that shrine in, I guess, more modern times, when it was said, yeah, we're going to start to restore Karnak, the shrine didn't exist. They ended up discovering it because pieces of it were all over the Karnak temple complex, much of it used as filler for other things. So it was dismantled and used and repurposed. So it wasn't, those pieces weren't as old as the wall that they were used as for filler. It was older. So when we look at something like this, it's like, yeah, that looks like a repair or filler or something. And, meaning that statue is likely much older than the construction it was taken out of. So it's going to be a bit of a recurring theme here throughout this. I'm going to get to some of your comments. I see that Some different people are in the house here. Sarah Yusuf has joined us this evening. Great to see you. Jacqueline Newman, great to see you as well. And it's constant denial, and not, I don't know so much as a constant denial as it is, well, okay, it is, but it's a constant narrative that they want to maintain. So they're not even going to listen to anything outside of that. So, and Sarah, yes, the landscape would have looked different than now, because basically when you look at Gobekli Tepe, the reason why it's a hill is simply because that's the temple complex. Without the temple complex there, it's generally flat land, but they had built up that temple complex, and then they decided to bury it. Now imagine the engineering that it would have taken to bury something like that. That's a lot of intense work. And so you would have had to have a very significant purpose to want to take all that time and effort to bury something like that. So I want to point out here the T-shaped pillars. Okay, this is a shape that we are actually finding all over the world. Of course, this is the connected universe. So what we do is we make connections, and we're finding this sort of shape in places like, well, there's Aramumuru, this is Lake Titicaca in Peru. It's basically sits between Peru and Bolivia. And this is the Lake Titicaca side. And basically you see that T shape, it's inverted in the middle. They call this the Stargate there. So the Gate of the Gods is the larger formation there, and then the smaller T shape is actually for humans. So the gods would use the larger one, and the humans would use the smaller one. Now, it's been a while since I've shown this clip, but this is one of those, when you watch it, you'll see like this download happen. And this was some years back now when I was at Chaco Canyon. First time I was ever at Chaco Canyon. Which I absolutely love, this Pueblo Bonito. There's so much there between the kivas. There's one of our significant keyhole structures that's there on the one side. Of course, you have a lot of petroglyphs along the wall talking about, you got the spirals for the portals, and the story of the star people using the portals to come down to Earth to spread knowledge to the humans. And there's this one particular room in there. There's only two ways into it. One is through this doorway that I'm about to show you. The other is through this little tiny passage that you essentially have to crawl through in order to get into it. And then there's this niche in the wall that you don't find elsewhere throughout the complex. So this was a very special, significant room. But let me go ahead and run this clip. So throughout many of the structures, there are these T-shaped doorways, and highly speculative as to what they're actually used for. Some believe that they were ceremonial, not practical, but they have these little sills, these little ledges here. Don't know if they're actually used for anything or if it was just, some people believe that they were used to mark a special location that you were entering. Again, we're speculating as to what these things were. Also, did these originate here, or did these type of doorways originate in Mexico? So many mysteries still here. We have something that just hit me while I'm standing here looking at this T-shaped structure. This is a hole, a doorway, I get that. But where else do we talk about T-shaped structures? Gobekli Tepe. Is this just the inverse was created out there more than 10,000 years ago? It just hit me as I'm standing right here looking at it. This is what I love about ancient mysteries. We may never find the answers, but it gets you asking the questions. Yeah, and that's something that I really enjoy about this. That some of these different ideas that I throw out there, like probably one of the more wild ones last year was, did Moses use a stargate? I think that threw a lot of people for a loop. But it's to get people thinking outside the box. Rather than staying in this constrained, confined narrative, let's think of other possibilities. I mean, it might be wrong, but I think it will get people churning different ideas and what these things are actually used for. Because as we discover more and more information, we're finding that the old stories that we were told, that we were taught in school, just aren't making any sense anymore. They're not adding up. And so, yeah, you can see that T shape that was there in the door was an inverse, really, of that. And then, of course, we see that T shape there's inversion. And then this is one that I've been using in my full Stargate presentation, like what I do on tour. The one on the left there, you see the middle was a Ramumuru. The one on the right, of course, is Gobekli Tepe. The one on the left is the gate hieroglyph in ancient Egypt. And you can see that the way that they have created that is as a T shape. So we're finding these connections all over the world. Gobekli Tepe, Egypt, Peru, Chaco Canyon, which is in New Mexico. So it's all over. We're finding these different connections. So I saw a couple other comments in here. Let's see. Tet's pointing out he has a helmet on. Going back to that particular statue, yeah, let's keep that in mind, that he is wearing some sort of headpiece there, because we will actually be talking about headpieces later on. Again, making different connections here, which is something that we need to do. That's pattern recognition is something that we as humans, well, I'll say some excel better at it than others, but it's something that we're taught as very young children to match the different patterns. Can you find, here's 5 different pieces of fruit on the paper. Can you find the apples and can you find the oranges? Very, very simple when we were young, but as we get older and older and older, we're able to find more significant pattern matches. So Sarah asking, could they take advantage of volcanic or tectonic activity? Possibly. I mean, that's a very, very significant energy expulsion, which I think is one of the reasons why something like the Alaska Triangle is so powerful. It has both that seismic activity, the tectonic activity from earthquakes, as well as the volcano. So makes it a very, very energetic area. If they knew how to do that, well, we know that they were harnessing energy from the ground. That's what so many of these different circles around the globe are about, is harnessing energy from the ground for a variety of different purposes, whether it was healing, entering into altered states of consciousness, opening portals. You can go down a whole list of different things. So yeah, I definitely believe that's possible. And then, yeah, Kate, we did notice a T-shaped doorway at Luxor too. Yeah, going between a couple of those different areas. I think it was a little bit more toward the back of the temple. But yeah, I remember we were coming from the back toward the front, and you had noticed that. So it was like, oh yeah, there's a T-shape. So very, very significant shape in the ancient world. And it's just like the spiral. It's just like the pine cones, just like the handbag. These different universal symbols that tells you that there was an interconnectedness across the world in ancient times. And more, we are getting this information like this. And we'll be talking a little bit about that in the after show tonight. So yeah, the after show is not so much about ancient Turkey here, as we're going to be going back to Egypt, but we will be examining, well, if you saw my social media feed this morning, the Mike's Morning Mug that I posted we'll be talking about this aspect of dating of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So similarly, let's move on a little bit here from Gobekli Tepe. Another location that we will be going to during the tour is Karahan Tepe. So little bit of a newer site. So originally discovered in 1997. Now this was discovered about 3 years after Klaus Schmidt started his initial excavations at Gobekli Tepe. So Klaus Schmidt was excavating in 1994. They found this in 97. Of Gobekli Tepe, originally they saw, part of the T-shaped pillar sticking up out of the ground in the 60s, and nothing was done about it. Klaus Schmidt, German archaeologist, decides that I want to follow up on that. So he heads out to Gobekli Tepe, starts excavating, and it was like some 20 years before it really started hitting the news. It was almost like some sort of suppression was being done, because in 1994, when Klaus Schmidt was excavating that, this was around that time, or just after, when Robert Schoch and John Anthony West were coming out with their redating of the Great Sphinx. And one of the arguments that was made against them on that was, well, you don't find any other sites around the world that are that old. Well, there's Gobekli Tepe. So yeah, it didn't hit the news all that much in 90. Now, when he first started excavating it in 94, he didn't really have a way to date it until it was some years later, as they got deeper and deeper and deeper into the excavations. And they're finding, yeah, this is significantly older. So Karahan Tepe is actually dated a little bit older than Gobekli Tepe, and that's with the conventional dating methods that we're using today. Now, Karahan Tepe is not as big of a site as Gobekli Tepe, and again, we only have a very small portion of Gobekli Tepe excavated. And even with Karahan Tepe, it's a small portion that they have excavated, but smaller than Gobekli Tepe, but older at this point. It really started to make some bigger news here around 2019, where they'd done some initial excavations early on. 2019, they started doing like more significant excavations there, and that's when it started really coming to light. And then you have some of my colleagues like Andrew Collins and Hugh Newman that have been out there a lot and been doing so much work to bring that site to light. And you're finding things, here. Okay, these are more of the phallic pillars, and in the middle is that really strange face in the midst of all of this. Very mysterious as to what's going on with that particular face in this basin that was carved out. Here you have more of the T-shaped pillars. So T-shaped pillars or even go further back than Gobekli Tepe. So yeah, you're finding more of those. You're finding anthropomorphic characters with the different animals that are represented there, and it's just become very fascinating what they continue to discover out there. And there are more sites that they have identified as this is a place that's going to have something, but they only have so much time and money and resources and everything to go to these sites and start excavating. So it's happening in pieces. And some of these places, I mean, they might not get excavated in our lifetime. So hopefully they'll get deeper and be able to uncover more things within our lives. But it's going to take a lot of work to uncover these, and it's really a privilege to be able to go out there and take a look at these. When I saw Karahan Tepe was on the itinerary where Muhammad put it, I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to get there, but yep, it is on the itinerary. So really privileged to be able to head out there and check that out. So Sarah's asking, why is there no integrity of the technology? Was it willfully forgotten? Were these places only used for a temporary purpose? I don't necessarily believe it was willfully forgotten. That's what I was talking about earlier, that again, we know that they purposely, at least that's the going thought right now, is that they purposefully buried these things. probably out of protection, given that the amount of work that would need to be done to bury it would be significant. It wasn't an immediate, this is something that we need to bury tonight or over the weekend. No, this is something that would take long, long time to bury. So they knew something was going to happen. They needed to make sure that the site was protected. And yeah, the loss of technology, this is something I get asked all the time. Well, how was something like building the pyramids was forgotten and things like that? Well, when you experience something like whether it's a cataclysm or a war or a number of these different things, knowledge gets lost, because when you are thrust back into survival mode, knowing how to build a temple doesn't matter. You need to get food. You need to put a roof over your head. So you're living in a little hut and you're going out and you're hunting and gathering again. It's like if right now the world was wiped out and thrust back into the dark ages, my ability to, because I spent 30 years in the IT field, my ability to fix a computer and program it and all that is completely irrelevant. There's no need or use for that at all. You know, corporate bankers and things like this. What do you need that for? When you just need to go out, you need to put a little roof over your head, maybe build a bivouac and hunt some rabbits or pick some wild berries or something. Like that's the knowledge you're going to need to know when that happens. And are you going to, like what I try to pass down, hey, if computers are ever invented again, you need to know this. No, I'm going to pass down the knowledge that I'm gaining from, well, this is how you put these two rods together to, put the roof up and all that. That's how these things end up getting lost. And, back thousands of years ago, it was a little bit more barbaric. So it wasn't simply, we're going to come in and occupy your land. A lot of times it was like, no, we're wiping you out. Your, all your people, your gods, your idols, that's it. So a lot of these people, it was just genocide. And so, whatever they knew got lost, and it's, taking us now to kind of dig around and be like, hey, there was somebody who lived here. There's a lot of just look around. There are a lot of cultures that have been discovered that archaeologists are kind of shrugging their shoulders, like it was somebody. We don't know exactly who they were. So, yeah, I don't believe it was willfully forgotten. Just circumstances, especially with a cataclysm of that size that we're talking about, circumstances as they were, it was forgotten, but I don't necessarily believe willfully. So, yeah, need a root cellar for backup. Absolutely. Jose, the average temperature at the, well, it depends on the time of year. Like, I haven't yet been to Turkey. I'll let you know when we are there in September, unless you want to come along and experience it with us, which again, I have the links down there in the description. When we've been in Egypt, I've been in Egypt different times of year. That, of course, that's further south than Turkey. So Egypt is hotter, but I've been there in February when it was 40 degrees Fahrenheit in Cairo. And I've been there in June in Luxor when it was 125 Fahrenheit. So yeah, it just depends on where you are in the country and what time of year. And even though between Cairo and Luxor, it's a few hundred miles, you start getting a lot closer to the equator. As you go further south into Egypt, it gets a lot hotter. So yeah, Sarah, if you want to go, we'd love to have you along. So yeah, again, I'll go ahead real quick here and pop up the flyer. So there's the flyer, and I do have the link down in the description. So definitely love to have you along. All right. So let's move on a bit from those particular sites because there are other places we're going to go, not just the tepes. So, and we're not going to be able to get to all of it. But one of the things I'm really, really interested in going to, because I have been talking about this for a while, are the underground cities. So, Cappadocia, we're going to be going to the Cappadocia region, and within Cappadocia are roughly 200 underground cities. Now, only about 40 of them have been officially identified and excavated to date. And only a couple of the larger ones like Derinkuyu or, or Kaimakla, which is the one that we are going to go to, are publicly available. Now, um, Kaimakla is a little bit more open and spacious, easier to navigate walking through it. Derinkuyu goes deeper, and this is an illustration of Derinkuyu and how deep it does go, and it's really just mind-boggling what they were able to do. So this is some interior shots of Derinkuyu here. So those listening to the podcast version later, you want to come out and take a look at this, Mike Ricksecker YouTube channel or connecteduniverseportal.com. This is Kaimakla, and it's just fascinating how they were able to dig all this out and connect them. Derinkuyu and Kaimakla are actually connected together through about 8 to 9 kilometers worth of tunnels. Like you're digging a highway underground. It's really, really impressive. And again, a bit of a mystery as to what these were originally built for. And traditional academia, now I will give them this. They do debate about who actually built this and what it was originally used for and all that. The most common theory is that they were originally built by the Hittites when they were being invaded by the Phrygians, and then later expanded by the Phrygians after the Phrygians ultimately won out. But that's never made much sense to me, because it's like, okay, we're being invaded by these guys over here. They're running us down. We're on the run. So let's stop for a couple of years here at this spot and let's dig it out and hide, kind of hide our heads in the ground like ostriches or something. Like, it doesn't make any sense. If you're on the run from this invading nation, I mean, okay, yeah, you're going to stand and fight for a little while, but if you are like seriously on the run being invaded, you don't have time to dig out an underground city. You need to haul off somewhere else. You're retreating. So you don't have the time to build an underground city, especially of this sort of stature. And you're talking, okay, 8 to 9 kilometers. I would have to do the math between that and miles, but basically we are talking miles of tunnels. And yeah, of course, I admit, sure, it was later expanded upon, of course. But here's the thing: is I don't doubt that the Hittites went into those tunnels and into those chambers while on the run from the Phrygians. But I think that those tunnels, that underground city, was already there. It's like they're running this down. Hey, I know of this place where we can hide. And you go down there and you hide and you hope they don't find you. And that got found. But it makes more sense that they found it and inhabited it later on. Again, this idea of repurpose. We saw it earlier. Okay, it was just a little statue, repurposed into the wall. But I believe that these great caverns were repurposed. And question becomes, when were they originally dug out? Because really, the material that you find is from the people that last inhabited it. Okay. Not the first, the last ones, because, as you're living, I mean, generally keep the place clean. This is something that comes up with the redating of the Sphinx as well. Like, oh, show us a potsherd from that era, and it's like, what are you talking about, a potsherd? It's a completely limestone enclosure, which we know for a fact was restored several times over. And you restore it, and you're like, hey, look what we did. We restored the Sphinx. We're going to have this, a great party and all this pageantry. So what are you going to sweep the place out and have it nice and spiffy for your ceremonies? You're not going to, oh, hey, there's some potsherds sitting over there from, from 1,000 years ago. Yeah, let's just leave them there. You're going to clean it up. So yeah, you're going to have these people living, and it's rock. Okay. It's not dirt where stuff gets buried over time and the layers upon layers. It's rock. Okay. So that doesn't have that same effect down there. So I've talked about this a bit before with, I actually write about it in my book, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. So basically they have determined when the last pole flip was. This is when that comes into place with the Alaska Triangle, is the electromagnetic activity of our planet. And that at one point in time, well, several points in time throughout ancient history, the North Pole was the South Pole and the South Pole was the North Pole. Well, the last time this happened, they got this actually off of ancient trees in Australia. The last time that this happened was about 40 to 42,000 years ago, and they estimate that the flip lasted 400 years. And through their analysis of the electromagnetic signature that was left from that time, and they can actually get it off of a number of different objects, but they were first onto this through ancient trees in Australia. That it lasted 400 years. Now, what was going on across the world 40 to 42,000 years ago? What else do we find? We find a lot of cave art. So, the Iberian Peninsula and all those caves that you find in France, in Spain, that are just covered in art. It's 40 to 42,000 years ago. So now this is not me as alternative history, speculating on this, or anything. Actual scientists coming forth and saying, yeah, it makes sense that, the Earth's magnetic protection, when that flip happened, again, according to the scientists, got down to about 6 to 8%. 6 to 8%. So meaning you go outside during the day, you are going to get fried by the sun, like irradiated. So you're not going to want to go outside and get fried with that heat and sun and get scorched, getting massive sunburn. You're going to stay inside in your cave during the day. You're going to go outside at night and you're going to do your hunting and all that. So what do you do inside the cave during the day? Make cave art. Well, so that's what they did in Spain and France, in that area of the world. What do they do in other parts of the world? Well, would it not make sense to do something like build that? Kind of makes sense to me. And I actually told a bit of this story. This is, again, back in Egypt, but I went this way in the Valley of the Kings, and this is something Mohammed and I have been talking about lately. So this is from the Egypt tour, but just another place. Okay, another little tidbit for those of you watching, if it wants to play. Okay, another little tidbit for those of you watching at home. Right here we see, again, a reflection, as above, so below, and it's a perfect reflection of what's at their feet and what's at their heads. But then also the idea that we have that these, what we're calling them now as tombs, were repurposed, is, you see this rock outcropping right there? Okay, if you have two generations here, 5 and 6, so they had 2 generations to carve all of this out, you'd think that they would have carved out that rock cropping right there, smoothed it out so they could include another piece of artwork right there. But they didn't. In fact, you can even see it goes up into that upper block there, and they kind of painted the one circle there over where the outcropping is. If this was their own, they would have taken care of that, but it wasn't. They repurposed it. So, yeah, just an example there of, the tombs in the Valley of the Kings possibly being repurposed, because obviously you look at that wall and it's, the people that painted it were not the same people that carved it. Because if they were, they would have chipped out that other section so that they could use, rather than kind of paint a little bit on it and then go around it, and just it doesn't make any sense. So now, was it people from 40 to 42,000 years ago that originally carved it, lived in it to try to, hide from the harmful rays of the sun during that era because of the pole flip? Maybe. I mean, there's no way to actually know. So, yeah, so it's an area that I'm really, really looking forward to seeing and exploring. I mean, I love cave systems and just kind of Indiana Jonesing it and everything through places like that. So Jacqueline, saying it flipped, but was a fast excursion back to the original. Was extreme event, and mass fauna became extinct in Neanderthals too. Yeah. I mean, I don't. I guess if you look at the grand scheme of the entire planet, I mean, 400 years would sort of be when you scale it like that, would be a fast excursion to the whole history of the planet. But if you think about 400 years ago, we're talking, Shakespeare. The first folio of Shakespeare was just published. The last of the oryx went extinct. Where was that? Like in Poland. Think of what was going on 400 years ago. It's just, there's a lot that happens across that history. And when you look at human generations, it's really kind of goes in sets of three. So, like my grandparents, my parents, me. Like I have no recollection of my great grandparents, and some people get that bit of a privilege, maybe a few years overlap there. Doesn't usually happen so much. So I'm not going to know from that set or the set before that. And so, doing a lot of my like genealogical research, I've seen where it's like, this section of the family, this section of the family, this section of the family, and we're actually just wrapped up a conclusion of that generation. My uncle passed. He was living in my grandparents' house. Had it. It would be 100 years in 1928. It would have been the family, and my great grandparents had built that house, and it's having to get sold right now. So that's like closing that chapter on that section of our family history, which would only be 1/4 of that entire time of 400 years. So yeah, it's human remembrance and perception. So those people hanging out in the caves for 400, well, that would have been their life. That would have been generation upon generation upon generation living in that particular lifestyle for so long. And at some point in time, when things finally got back to normal, then okay, now we're coming out of the caves and now we're starting to live a different life. So and yeah, Sarah, people do say we're due for one soon, but that could be tomorrow, it could be 100 years from now. Yeah, we don't know. I mean, it's always moving, and we've been able to track that really since the 1700s, which is kind of wild to think of when you look at those pole tracking maps. They do go back to the 1700s. I mean, there's some jumps and gaps, but we've been tracking that on a more regular basis now that we have more modern technology for that. So, all right. We are also headed to Mount Nimrut, which is really, really an incredible place. I'm looking forward to this one as well. And it's famous for the first century BC royal tomb of Antiochus, and the massive limestone statues that are believed to be gods and the king. And here you can see the heads on the ground, and that's the seated positions up at the top of the hill there, where they had been. But this is something that has been really, really interesting. Kate is really looking forward to getting to this place because of the pointed hats. This is something that she is really, really keyed in on. and I've taken notice of it for a while as well because of the gold pointed hats. But it's interesting when I'll get into the gold pointed hats here in a moment. But it's interesting when we go into museums, or maybe we're there in Egypt, or I think we even noticed some stuff in Greece. Heck, we were at the museum here in Cleveland, and Kate's pointing out, like, there's the hat, there's the pointed hat. It is significant. Um, and there is some significant meaning behind the pointed hats, and it is something that she is really, really, really on top of, and I applaud her for that. Um, Again, I first noticed it, and it was a documentary series, some sort of ancient civilizations, not the Gaia ancient civilizations. It was a different one that I had watched years ago, and they had one of their. It wasn't the entire um, what was it? I think it was actually on the stone circles and Stonehenge and all that. Somehow they ended up bringing in the story of these. There's four of them that have been found. These tall, pointed gold hats, and you see these different symbols that are on them. You know what they are? They are celestial symbols. So, um, like phases of the moon and equinoxes and things like this. And so it's believed that they were used by the priests to help the community know, hey, when's the time to plant the crops. When is it that we need to do these specific ceremonies at our stone circles and things like this. That these were the quote unquote wizard hats, and there are only four of them that have been found today. You gotta think, somebody comes across gold like this. Um, they're going to take it. They're going to melt it down. That's what happened a lot in ancient times. We're invading. They've got gold. I don't care what they used it for. We're going to take it, melt it down, and turn it into our own items. So these scattered in let's see, France, Germany, so throughout Europe, kind of scattered. They were found in some really, really random places, almost like they were hidden. Again, kind of that idea of, we're being invaded. We need to hide it, and then they never came back to go get it. So on a smaller scale, this being not willfully forgotten, but eventually forgotten over time until it was dug up in more modern times. So when we see these pointed hats like this is very, very important. These were important people that had a significance to them. These were the knowledge keepers. We even see like depictions of Enki, when we talk like Enki and Enlil, back in the ancient Sumerian traditions and the Anunnaki, we see here again the pointed hats. So yeah, I really appreciate Kate keeping an eye out for that stuff, because it is so very significant. And and through a lot of her sessions, she has come up with some really, really fascinating information about about the knowledge keepers, about the shining ones, and the sages, and these people that wore these style hats. So these are very, very important people. So yeah, really looking forward to getting to Mount Nimrut, and seeing. I'm expecting. I really am. I'm expecting Kate to just download and channel some incredible information while we were there. So that is another one that is on the tour. So, and here's Kate down here saying the pointed hats first showed up in my past life regression, and then I started to notice them in different cultures. They were the elders in my lifetimes. So yeah, that's going to be incredible when we go there, and I'm absolutely looking forward to it. So come join us for it. I mean, dead serious. Come join us. And again, I have the link there down in the description as well. So, and there are many other places. I mean, this is only a couple or a few handful of places that we're going to throughout the tour. Of course, we're actually starting in Istanbul, going to the Hagia Sophia. So absolutely looking forward to that. So beautiful. I've, of course, not yet been, but absolutely looking forward to it. And then the Basilica Cistern. So Yeah, really, really fascinating. Some of you may have seen it's actually appeared in some different films. I think the most recent one may have been Inferno with Tom Hanks, the Dan Brown novel turned film. Um, but another place in which we see that repurposing. And what's interesting about they call it the Basilica Cistern because prior to it, there was a basilica on that spot. And then when it was built, which was the early Roman age, third, fourth century, around that time, um, there were gardens and there was a colonnade and it faced the Hagia Sophia. So really, really interesting. But then we see this repurposing of these heads, and we're not exactly sure where they originally came from. There's a couple of them, but they are the face of Medusa, and it's thought that they were brought to the cistern after being removed from a different building. Again, repurposing, uh, possibly from the late Roman period, but yeah, we're not really sure. Traditions has it that the blocks are oriented sideways and inverted upside down in order to negate the power of Medusa. But again, it's a repurposing of something in an unconventional way. Going back again to what did we see here at Gobekli Tepe? You know, I believe that's a repurposing of that particular statue, just like we see here. So it happened. Things are repurposed all throughout antiquity like that. And so it makes it difficult to really try to date some of these ancient sites because a lot of times people look at it and they're like, "Oh, this is what they did. They built it like this." And we'll come up with what might they have used that for? Well, I'm going to say, they was warding off the spirits or something like that. It's like could have just very well been that they were building this thing out and like we need building materials, so we're going to grab that and we're going to put it in here because we're not using that. That was those other people. We don't know them anymore, or we took them over and we'll take that and put it in there. So when we get into the after show, we're going to get into a little bit of that as well when it comes to the Great Pyramid. So the after show, again, when we jump into there, I have a separate link here in YouTube and also there on the Connected Universe portal. You'll find, because that's a direct StreamYard link that you guys get in the portal, will take you to that. And that's to provide some other options for being able to access the after show live. Because those that are members of the portal or Patreon are able to get that in a non-live version. So I'm trying to provide another option to get into the after show live to be able to witness all that. So, and again, I do encourage people to join us for this Ancient Mysteries of Turkey tour, September 8th through the 17th. Going to be an absolutely incredible time with Muhammad and I. And yeah, we do have another Stargates tour coming up in 2027. Kate and I also have a tour in Germany coming up at the end of September. So a lot of different tour options. And some of you may have, I saw it just before I jumped in here this evening. James Keenan and I are talking about doing a tour in Mexico to hit like Teotihuacan and all those places down there. Maybe it would be really hard pressed to do it. Maybe the beginning of November this year, more likely April next year for that one. So a lot of tours and things going on. Just keep up on my social media. You can subscribe to the newsletter. Check out my website, mikericksecker.com, for the events pages. For this particular tour, the Turkey tour, just you can click that link in the description there and come join us, get more information on that. So, and there are payment plans and things like that that Muhammad has set. Well, I should say Noha has set up. His wife, his wife runs the company. Muhammad's the guide, and then there's a whole great team of people involved as well. So, all right, and those that are listening to us after the fact, that are listening to the podcast later, I do encourage you to join us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, connecteduniverseportal.com. All right, everybody, I'm going to jump into the after show. And yeah, like Kate said, very, very excited to visit there. So again, I have the link to the after show. I have it in the description. You can just go to the YouTube channel. It's going to be there in the live section. And for portal members, it's there on, well, the meetup page that's there has the link for the after show. I think I have it in there also on the Connected Universe Facebook group, the private one that you guys get access to when you sign up for the portal. So, all right, everybody. Till next time, time really exists.